Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Notes and Quotes podcast. So glad to have you guys here. So, one thing about this podcast is that I always try to be very candid and honest with you guys. And the honest truth is that this episode was not supposed to be this episode today. This episode was actually supposed to be about zero waste and the zero waste lifestyle. I knew I wanted to do a climate episode because I hadn't done a climate episode in quite a while, and we were supposed to talk about zero waste, and we probably will talk about zero waste in a bit, so look out for that in the coming weeks. But something told me no. Before I do zero waste, I need to talk about international advocacy, specifically the world of international advocacy, diplomacy, negotiations, that kind of thing, and why I have taken a step back away from it. Now, most of you probably don't know me, so to give a little bit of backstory about myself, I have been a pretty avid international climate advocate for, I would say, roughly 3 years or so. I've done most of my work through a nonprofit organization called the Ashley Lashley Foundation, which I highly recommend everybody go check out. It's a wonderful organization that I have done such brilliant and fulfilling work with. And through my work with them, I got a lot of opportunities to go to international climate conferences, be on panel discussions, and just meet people from all different spheres, whether it's people from the UN or people from, really vulnerable communities like my own, which would be Barbados, other youth climate advocates, and people who really have a high stake in the issues, and also different policymakers and world leaders and people who have very strong influence in these spaces. And even though I've only been in this sphere for, I would say, probably, like I said, 3 years, which is in hindsight not really that much time if you compare it to the other advocates who have been in this sphere for decades. But in my limited time here, I have seen a lot, learned a lot, and have a deeper understanding for the way that international advocacy works, and the discouraging things and the hopeful things. And all of those culminate for the reason why I have decided to take a step back, at least for now. Because I definitely do plan to go back into that world, because I don't think I can ever leave. It's so important to fight for the issues that you believe in, and that's why I will probably never not be a climate advocate. But anyway, the reason I was inspired to talk about this topic today was because of a really powerful poem slash speech that I saw given by Ayisha Siddiqa at one of the international climate conferences either last year or 2 years ago. And for those of you who don't know her, Ayisha Siddiqa is an amazing, amazing climate advocate and human rights activist who is also an advisor to the UN General Secretary and represents millions of youth all over the world. She's from Pakistan and she has done some incredible work. To be honest, I have actually seen slash heard this speech before, but it didn't really set in for me. Like it didn't actually, I didn't hear it and feel it as much as I did now that I have taken a step back from international advocacy, and now that I have actually been in the spaces that she was speaking at, I can actually resonate with this poem slash speech that she presented so much more, and that's why I want to talk about it with you guys today. So as you can imagine, our quote for today does come from her speech. And to be quite honest, I'm probably going to use a couple quotes from it, because while I was preparing this episode, I found it incredibly difficult to just pick out one short quote from her poem. Her poem isn't very long, but I couldn't pick out one quote. So I decided I'm going to play a portion of the speech for you guys so you can hear it and feel it in the way that I did. And then we can talk about it and select different quotes from that speech so that we can explain the world of international advocacy and why it can be so discouraging for so many youth advocates, and ultimately why I've taken a step back and what will make me go back into international advocacy. So here's Ayisha.
I tell you that even our dead have drowned in their graves, and you ask me to be polite. You ask me not to blame or shame, and remember the color of my skin, the sound of my tongue and my place in your world. You tell me to give you a little bit more benefit of the doubt, to angle my face in front of the camera and give you the perfect soundbite of hope and forgiveness. You take and take and take until we've birthed our babies into the same water as our dead. And even then, you gather like vultures and feed on our helplessness. In your charity, you make profit. I tell you that there has been a massacre, and the land will never be the same. The soil will never grow the same. The hum of mosquitoes has changed the color of the sky. And the sickness of your greed will haunt you in every single lifetime. And you tell me about a new UN proposition. Some politicians lie that you keep cradling between your mouth and your ear. The bridges you will make after the bombs. Ayisha, you've got to be a little more practical. Ayisha, smile so they know you are not dangerous. And still, 100 dead, 200 dead, 1,500 dead, and no negotiation. No negotiation, no negotiation will bring them back to life.
So it goes without saying that that was incredibly powerful and heartbreaking and uncomfortable and everything. It just was honestly the essence of Ayisha Siddiqa. And what it does when I listen to it, it really brings out the essence of what international advocacy can be like. The bureaucracy, the charity posturing, the long drawn out and repeated discussions that we've been doing for decades on decades. And that part of it can be extremely discouraging for anybody who actually really cares about the issue and really knows the urgency of these situations that we are talking about. So on the outside, sometimes I think international advocacy can seem super simple in a way, for lack of a better word. You see youth advocates going on the stage and speaking out and calling out things and, talking about things that are really important and advocating for the vulnerable communities. And it seems great and it seems like they're really making a difference. And they are. But behind that is a world of intense intricacies where there are really specific negotiations going on between many different political leaders just to sign off on one sentence of a larger document that only agrees on whether to start the solution. And then there's other people who are there who are holding their tongue because they've been sponsored to be there by somebody who they cannot speak out against. And, there's just these little things that go on behind the scenes that really make international advocacy a very interesting place to be in. And the thing is, all of that can take a really big mental toll on you when you first go. Because okay, let me talk about myself. When I first went to, it was COP28, which was at the time of filming last year in 2023, November/December. And my God, I was so excited to go. And up to now, I'm so, so grateful that I did get to go. But I was more so excited because I thought that I was going to be able to actually borderline save the world alongside all of the people that I was going with and representing Barbados with. But then when I walked in to the COP venue and I was there for a couple days, I realized something that was going on, which was we were having so many discussions. It's so many it's panel discussion after panel discussion after panel discussion. It's conference after conference, meeting after meeting, negotiation after negotiation. And half of the time, everybody's saying the same things over and over and over and over again, talking about the same urgencies, the same issues, the same we need to act now, we need to act for this community and this community. And it's just like, wait, hold on. We're talking about the same thing 50 times a day, and we've been talking about the same thing for the past 28 COPs, 28 years of COPs, and even before that, we were still advocating for climate justice, and we're still doing this now. And all the while, like Ayisha said, 100 dead, another 100 dead, another community lost. Wait, why are we not acting faster? Why are we not doing the things that we say we're going to do? It's like making a plan for the day and then just laying in your bed reading over the plan again and again and again and making sub plans for the plan but never actually getting up out of the bed to start the day. Now let me just say I'm not suggesting that absolutely no action happens, because it does, and we have made progress over the years, that's undeniable, but oh my gosh, not nearly as fast enough as we should be. We have, like I said, done 28 COPs, had I don't even know how many years since the Paris Climate Agreement has been signed on to by many different states. We have been doing this for so long. Why have we not made more progress at a faster rate? Why are we on the brink of extinction in the way that we are right now when we know all of the issues that we're talking about and we have the solutions right there? We just need to act on them. And that's when I really not only learned about but saw the weight that diplomacy and bureaucracy holds on you. I like to think of diplomacy and bureaucracy as two anchors that you attach to the back wheels of a car, and the car is the actual solution and the movement and the action that we want to take, and diplomacy and bureaucracy are the two anchors that are just kind of dragging behind and slowing down the whole process. Now, before you come for me, I get it. International issue means international negotiations. 100%. I know that. But the problem with that is that, I mean, everybody knows the more people you have in a negotiation, the slower the process will be. The more people you have trying to decide on one thing, the harder it will be for everybody to decide, because you can't please everyone. And that is the problem when it comes to international advocacy and why everything takes so long. So you have another UN proposition that is popping up, similar to the Paris Climate Agreement, similar to the Loss and Damage Fund, and all of these things that take forever to sign on, months, weeks, years to just agree. And then once it's agreed upon, it needs to be funded. And then once it's funded, it needs to be acted on and it needs to be managed. And then you start to see change, but that takes so long. But I think what's worse than that is exactly what Ayisha was alluding to, which is a lot of the time, these agreements that people sign on to, they sign on to for posturing, or for lack of a better explanation, faking that they care. And I'm not saying this is for everybody, I'm just saying it happens a lot where people will sign on to agreements and then act differently. It's like saying you're going to do one thing and then acting in the complete opposite of what you said you were going to do. So you say that you're going to phase out fossil fuels, but then you fund another fracking or big oil venture pursuit. And not only does this slow down the process, but it literally debilitates the process, because now we're just wasting time. And all of that can seriously have a really big mental toll on, I would say, especially youth advocates, because it is our future that we're here fighting for. I think it's a lot harder for the older generation to relate to climate change and to understand climate change and to feel it in the way that young people do, because it's not their futures on the line. They've lived their lives. They almost don't care because it's done. And unless they have kids, or unless they, plan to be around for a much longer time, climate the climate crisis is never going to be as dire a crisis as it is for the people who are really facing it, which are ultimately young people and the most vulnerable groups of society, which tend to be global south countries and women and other vulnerable groups. So when groups like that come into these spaces and see what it's like and see the time that is being wasted, it tends to make you so unfulfilled and discouraged by the entire process. And that is something that I definitely have experienced. And part of the reason I've decided to take a step back. And this isn't the first time that I have, to be quite honest with you. I took a step back, I think, sometime in the early months of 2023, maybe. I can't honestly remember. There was a time where I took some time away from it all, or I just started to like do a little bit less climate advocacy because it was just starting to get to me. All of the bureaucracy and negotiations and everything that I saw going on. And then simultaneously, you see long haul negotiations going on and then communities being destroyed. That just kind of really impacts you. And so I had decided to stop for a bit. But with continuing my work with the nonprofit, because I never stopped that, it's just that I stopped, my passion stopped a little bit. But I was continuing my work with the nonprofit, and in doing so and getting other opportunities to go meet these groups, I started to realize how much youth advocacy matters. Because, okay, it's something that I don't think anybody that hasn't been in these spaces will actually be able to relate to, but I'm going to try my very best to explain it. But it's very much akin to kind of the David and Goliath story. So you have everything that I had talked about just now, the big anchors of bureaucracy and diplomacy on the car. And then you have youth who tend to not really have a very strong voice when it comes to massive issues or political things, and don't really get afforded a seat at the table. And so when they make their own seat, they bring their own chair and they essentially decide to collectively drive the car themselves. It is so empowering, I think. And it actually makes a huge difference. So I have been in spaces where I have seen, once again, the same conversations going on over and over and over again. And then people like Ayisha Siddiqa, like Greta Thunberg, like other Caribbean youth advocates I've worked with, come into the space and they shake things up. And that is what youth are supposed to be doing. They shake it up, they reform the foundation of how we are supposed to be doing things, and they wake people up. Because that's the other thing that I just want to sidetrack and go into. I think what happens, and I've seen this, and it's not entirely their fault, but before I get ahead of myself, let me actually explain what I'm talking about. I think a lot of policymakers and influential people who come into these spaces who have to be in the international negotiations, what happens a lot is that because there's such an intricate process and you have to kind of work to please almost everybody in that space just so you can get a signature so we can start acting on the issue, a lot of the time the agreements tend to be watered down because you're changing a little word here and a little word there so that people will agree. And then by the time you do that, the negotiation is watered down so much that the impact is reduced, or you have to give to get. So you're doing something for somebody so that you can get what you want and the action that you want towards the solution, if that makes sense. It's almost like a game where you are kind of just tiptoeing around everybody so that you can get action to take place. And when you do that and you play that game for so long and you do the whole negotiation and diplomacy thing for so long, you tend to get a little desensitized to the issue. And it's just natural, to be honest. Like, if you think about video games, you are playing a murder game and you are just going through the motions and seeing the same things over and over and over again, and you've been working in that sphere over and over and over again, you tend to get desensitized to the fact that you just murdered a civilian. You know what I mean? And that's exactly kind of what's happening in those spaces as well. I think a lot of people tend to get desensitized to the issues, especially because a lot of the time, the people who are in those rooms and negotiating back and forth have not actually set foot in the communities that are being hurt the most. And what happens when youth come in and shake up the scene and give you a face-to-face impact of what is actually going on, who is being impacted, the communities that are being wiped out, they not only end up inspiring people to change and to act, but they end up inspiring hope. And I think hope is the most powerful thing when it comes to these spaces. And that's the hope aspect is the one singular reason why I have been able to stay in international advocacy for the past 3 years. Because without hope, there's no action. And for action, you need hope. It's a give and get. So I think youth have become the driver of hope. But the downside is exactly what Ayisha Siddiqa was saying. People have come to understand that. So now we have to be kind of a soundbite for hope, where we are now the ones postulating hope, and we are the ones that are trying to go up on the scene and be like, oh, it's not all doom and gloom. It's not so bad. Give us the benefit of the doubt. And, let's talk about the hope for the future and just kind of put on these rose-colored glasses and stop acting like the house is burning down, as Greta Thunberg would have said in her famous speech a few years ago. And ultimately, that has become the reason why I have decided to take a step back yet again, because I don't think that I have it in me at this time to go up on another stage or go up on another panel discussion and talk about hope when I see the same issues playing out over and over and over and over again. And I know that sounds super depressing. I know that sounds super depressing and super discouraging. And that's not the goal of this episode at all. So please do not feel like everything is all doom and gloom. Because like I said, change is occurring. And that's why I'm so happy to be seeing youth advocates taking the mantle and actually fighting for the change that we so desperately need. But I think for me, the only way that it is meaningful is if there's honesty and truth backed behind it. And right now, I am slightly ashamed to say that I have lost some of the hope that I previously had. But like I said, it comes back for me when I see the actual change happening. And that actual change is brought about by the advocates that are in that space. So it kind of is a catch-22. Like, to get the change, you need to be in the spaces. But being in the spaces can actually give you a discouragement that makes you feel like you can't get change. So it's a bit of a catch-22. But the overall reason why I've taken a step back is because, to be honest, I never really want to be in a space as important as that and not be genuine in what I'm saying. I want to genuinely represent the people that I am there to represent, which is why I would leave a space open for those who still hold the hope that they need to inspire action in the way that they are doing so in so many great ways. And when I see them doing that, that will inspire me. And that will give me that hope back. And that will encourage me to go back into those spaces and actually be able to speak and contribute to the issues in a way where I can actually shake up the scene like other youth advocates are able to do. And it's absolutely fine to lose hope sometimes. It's absolutely fine to feel discouraged and to feel a bit lost. It's part of the human experience. I don't believe any single youth advocate who will ever tell me that they have never lost hope, or they have never felt discouraged, or they have never felt like maybe they can't be an advocate anymore. I don't think anybody has ever not felt like that if you've been in this space. Because it's just not true. The nature of this space can be an extremely discouraging thing. And the fact that so many of us have been so resilient is what I find to be the most admirable part of this entire thing, which is why I will, like I said, never actually step away 100%. And what I will say is, even though it is okay for you to take a step back from anything, whether it's international advocacy, whether it's work, whether it's school, whether it's, other obligations for your own personal well-being, and for you to come back to yourself, that's fine. But in the meantime, there is still an impact that you can make. And that's what I've been doing. So I still practice my personal activities that I think would be beneficial to the causes. So, for example, making sure I make very sustainable choices in my life, whether it is, very simple things, taking a reusable bag to the grocery store, shopping secondhand, or minimizing my materialistic tendencies, or highlighting voices who are on that stage and making a huge impact in the ways that they have been doing. And of course, continuing to contribute to organizations that have been making a difference, still like the Ashley Lashley Foundation and other organizations that I will begin working with as well. So there are other ways to make a difference. Not everybody, I've said this for so many years, not everybody needs to be an international advocate. I wouldn't recommend everybody to be an international advocate because, like I said, it can be a really debilitating place. But I do think it's so important for youth to be in those spaces, shaking up the scene. Because if not, then those anchors, the weights on the car will only get bigger to the point where the car will just stop. It will stop slowing down and it will just stop. We need to be able to be there to drive the car forward. And that's what I see youth doing every single day of my life. So, yeah, I hope that this wasn't a super a super discouraging episode. I really hope this wasn't a doom and gloom episode. I hope that you found the light in the dark of what I have been talking about today. I hope I was able to at least emulate that because even though international advocacy can be a really discouraging place, it can also be a really beautiful place. You meet so many incredible people that inspire you so much and you create beautiful relationships with those people and learn so much from those people. And I forgot to mention that that is actually my favorite part. Can't believe I forgot to mention that. That is my favorite part of international advocacy. Hearing other people's stories, sharing with them, connecting with them, and learning from them is by far the best part of the entire process. So, yeah, with that, I will wrap up and say that that is all I have for you guys today. I hope that you can be inspired to take action in your own lives and hopefully have a better glimpse into what these issues are like and what it's like being in these spaces and shake up the scene in your own personal ways, whether it's in your own personal life, whether it is on the local political sphere or the international political sphere, wherever. I hope that you have been inspired to make a difference in whatever way you feel you are capable of doing. And if you are interested in my international advocacy journey, you can check out my Instagram page, Naomi A. Cambridge, to learn more about the stuff that I have done and the work that I have done. Shout out to the Ashley Lashley Foundation for all of the things that they have done. You can Google them and look them up on pretty much any social media platform, and they should be there. And of course, if you want to hear more discussions like this one and discussions on many other topics, then please stay tuned and follow the Notes and Quotes podcast on any streaming platform that you're listening on. We're also on YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram. So you can look us up there. Notes and Quotes Pod on TikTok and Instagram, and the Notes and Quotes Podcast on LinkedIn and YouTube if you're looking to find us. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a 5-star review. And as always, it was such a pleasure talking with you guys today, and I hope to see you again next week. Bye, guys.